Hi there, this is Mihai. This video is different because it starts with a question. Have you ever had the need to validate if an email address is valid or not? To know before sending that email if that email is going to bounce or not? Obviously you did. If you are working in the marketing department, if you're an entrepreneur, or if you ever had to send emails to your users, to your clients, to your prospects, you had this problem. And let me show you how you can address that problem with PROCESIO. This video is going to be a bit technical. We're going to go through the processes that we have created, and we are open sourcing it. We are giving it away for free. And this is just one of the videos in a series of videos where we are going to share use cases that we have created, and we're going to give that for free for our community to use with PROCESIO to address their current pains and problems. So let's get digging. In order to address this problem, we have created 3 processes. Those are the 3 processes that I was mentioning about. The first process that we're going to start with is this one, check emails from files. The way you are going to use it, and I'm going to show it to you how you are going to use it, and then we're going to go through each of the process for you to understand what we have created. Don't worry, you can pause this video, you can rewind it and listen again, and also we're going to give those processes that we are presenting here for free. We're going to give all the import file, all the database scripts and everything, so you can import it in your PROCESIO subscription. So let's get going. Let's run the process. It will have an input file. Let's choose that file. Sorry, I will use this one. I have prepared the file and I'm going to show it to you. So the file that you need to import needs to have one column that is called email. And you have to have all the emails that you want to validate on that column. So this is the email that the emails that I'm going to try and validate. I'm going to close this and import it in the process. Let's run the process and see what happened. What should happen is that at the end of this process, I will have a variable on the output, which is a report file. Let's download that file and see what's its content. And I should have basically all the values, all the email files, all the emails that I wanted to validate. And on the column E, deliver, I should have an indicator if I should send an email to that email address. If it's true, then I can send emails to that email address. If it is false, then it's very likely that this email is going to bounce. So do not send emails to emails that are going to bounce. Now, how did we do this process? I will show you. So the first thing that we are going to do is use the get file data action in order to read the contents of the emails. As I mentioned, we're only looking at the column email. You can have multiple columns. We're going to take only the email address, the email column. Then with this information, we're going to send it to a database, and we have done here a store procedure. Again, we're going to give all the scripts for you to install everything that's needed within your infrastructure or within your own database or whatever. Cool. So as you can see here, we have a parameter expiration days. You can change that. So basically, if you are going to verify the same email address 2 times or multiple times, then we're going to store that information in the database and take it from there without validating again, right? So this is a sort of cache that we have implemented. You can change this value so that it suits your needs. Then for this store procedure is going to output the list of emails that need to be validated, and that basically if you send, for example, two email addresses multiple times, then you will not have to validate the second time you import that data. So you only get the emails that you need to validate. And then for each of the email addresses in the list that you extracted from the database, then you are going to check the email address. And for that we have a second process that I'm going to show you in a second. And after you validate the email address, then you get the results from the database for all the email addresses that you imported in the file. So we're going to use the name of the file in order to identify what we called campaign name. Now, and then we're going to export the content of this list into an Excel. And then you can use that Excel for whatever other purposes you have. Good. So let's see the check email process, what it does. It's, as you can see, it's a bit complex and it does multiple things, and I will go through each of them. First of all, we're going to prepare the email address so that we can store it in the database and we can validate it easily. Then we're going to trim all the spaces before and after the actual email address. And then we're going to use the regex validate action in order to validate if this is a valid format for emails. And then we check, is it a valid format? If it is, then we're going to split based on a round, right? Because we want to get the domain name. Why do we want to get the domain name? Because we are going to register the domain name in the database. Sorry. First of all, before registering the domain name in the database, we're going to see if this domain name is already in the database. And if it is, it's going to tell us if it's a disposable domain name or not, because that's what we're trying to find out. That's why we got the domain name, to validate if the email address is from a disposable domain name. Now, if we have the domain name, it's not in the database, then we will need to check it if it's a disposable domain name. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to use a service, disposable.debounce.io. We are not affiliated with them in any way, but we have found the service to be really good. And this is how it's going to respond, right? So if you send an email address with a domain name, then it's going to tell you if it is disposable or not. And that's how we are ensuring that this domain name is or not disposable. We have built also, we have gathered from multiple sources a list of disposable domain names so that we know if that domain name is disposable or not without necessarily sending a request to disposable.debounce.io. The way we do that is basically through this action. If the domain name is already in the database, then we will get information regarding this. And for you to see, this is basically the information that we have in the list of domain names. We have more than 122,000 disposable domain names in our database that we are monitoring, and every time we find a new disposable domain name using the disposable.debounce.io service, we're going to add that in the list that we are maintaining. So keep in mind, this is very useful. Because if it is a disposable domain name, even though you will be able to send that email, nobody will probably read that. So no need to send emails to disposable domains. And that's why you need to find out if it is or not a disposable domain name. And then the next step is to take a decision if it is a disposable, it's not empty. If we got a response from the service, then we're going to register that domain name in the database, and that's how we maintain the list of domain names with the required information, right? So as you can see here, this is what we are inserting. So again, step-by-step explanation of the process, quite technical. I know if you're not a technical person, skip this step. Don't worry about it. It's going to work without you understanding it. So we're just explaining it for the technical people that want to get deeper within the process. Okay, so after registering it, then we're going to query the database again, and now this time it's in the database. So we're going to take the first value of the domain name that we got from the database, and then we're going to map an internal variable with to know if it is disposable, if the DNS is valid, and so on. And then we're going to take a decision. Now the decision is it a DNS valid domain name? Is it disposable? And if the email address, in this case, we have a particular use case that's why we added this condition, then we know that we set the flag to be valid. And then we're going to go in this direction. We're going to set the flag as not valid. The email is not valid, the success is false, and the deliverability is low. And then we're going to prepare the email address in order to store it in the database. We're making it JSON safe, making it SQL safe, and then we're going to register the email address in the database using a store procedure that we have prepared. And obviously we are going to mark this as, sorry, where is it? Overall score 0. Okay, deliverability is low. Okay, so now let's go on the other route. If the domain is valid, then we're going to get the email from the database, right? Again, if the email address is in the database, because so far we haven't saved it in the database, you can run this process as standalone. It's not necessarily to run it from this process. That's why we check, is it already in the database, right? This information. If it is in the database, then we're going to get the first value, because this query also returns the information from the database regarding this email. If it is not, then we're going to encode the email, and then we're going to call another service that we have discovered. It's called ipqualityscore.com. Again, we are not affiliated with them in any way, but we have been using their service, and it proved out to be quite valuable and of really good quality. And we are sending the email address to their service and getting back the email valid information. So this is the IP quality score tool that we are looking at. You have the option of buying plans from them, but also you have some free validations that you can run every month. So you can test it as it is, or you can buy a plan for them. But also you can change this process in such a way that you use other services, not necessarily those ones. So that's the power of PROCESIO. After we query the IP quality score service, then we're going to extract the information in a string, and we're going to prepare it for storing it in the database, and then we send it to the database using this query. So we're going to again make sure that the domain is registered. We get information from IP quality score about this domain, information that potentially is not already gathered from the other steps in the process, and then we are also registering this email. And the process stops, right? So that's the entire process, and that's why we get the results from the database after we have iterated through each of the email addresses from the file. And after we get all the information and store that information in a list of JSONs, then we export that again to a report file that you can use for whatever purposes you have. And this is it. It's quite straightforward, it's quite easy to use, and we have another process here in case you do not want to use this process from a file, with an import file, but you have that information in another process in PROCESIO in a list of emails. You could use that with this process. We're going to give all those three processes away with all the database structures associated to it, with everything that's required for you to configure those processes and run them in your own PROCESIO environment. Now, let's see how the results also look in the database. That's how you can track basically every import file. As I mentioned, we consider it to be a campaign, so that's how you could use that to track multiple campaigns that you are using those processes to validate the email addresses in those campaigns. And you can run multiple instances of this process that I've just shown to you in parallel, so that you can validate multiple emails from multiple campaigns at the same time in parallel. This is very powerful, and this is just the first video out of a series of videos that you will see how we combine this use case with other use cases to create something truly impressive. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that is of great use to you, and I can't wait to see what you build with this. See you soon.